Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering the Spirits of 76, and this is the 16th episode and final episode of this Scooby-Doo Show Season 1. It originally aired on December 18th, 1976, and it finds the gang in Washington, D.C. at the Splitstonian Institute, where they are haunted by the ghosts of Benedict Arnold, William Demont, and Major Andre. Seeing as this episode aired in 1976, the title might be referencing that, or it might be referring to 1776, which was the year the Declaration of Independence was signed. A little history lesson for you. This is kind of new to me because I'm not American, I'm Canadian, but Benedict Arnold was an American general who changed sides in 1779, betraying America to the British. Major John Andre was a British spy who was caught and hanged, and William Demont was an assistant officer who also switched sides and joined the British during the Battle of Fort Washington in 1776. The Splitstonian is obviously a take on the Smithsonian Institute, if I'm saying that right, but I can't help feel there are a few kids out there who have been referring to the Splitstonian without knowing any better, perhaps thinking it was some kind of bowling museum. That's a bit of a joke. A dumb joke. A dad joke. A lame joke. Anyway, enough of my jibber jabber. Let's get on with the review. The episode begins with the gang driving in the Mystery Machine on a dark and stormy night. We see several famous buildings in Washington flash by. Some of the famous buildings we see are the Washington Monument, the White House, and the Lincoln Memorial. Freddy is a little upset as they came for the bicentennial celebration and all they can see is rain, rain, rain. Daphne had her heart on visiting the Lincoln Memorial, but since it's outdoors, it's too wet to go out and see it. Shaggy suggests they visit the Splitstonian Institute, and there they can spend hours inside and keep dry and warm. Running inside, they miss the shadowy figure above them, creepily watching them.
I was hoping we'd get to visit the Lincoln Memorial today.
Why not spend the rest of the day indoors? We could visit the most fabulous museum in the world, the Splitstonian Institute.
We'd get to see John Glenn's space capsule and the Wright brothers' biplane.
Inside, the museum is dark, spooky, and empty. A museum guard named Mr. Grumper informs them that the place is haunted and it has scared off all the tourists. He also remarks that they're closing soon before he heads off to do his rounds. Known for her shoe fetish, Daphne finds it odd that the security guard's shoes are squeaky and wet, so Freddy suggests that they keep their eye open for some more clues.
Wow! And double wow! The Wright brothers' airplane and Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis.
This place really has everything. Except people.
You kids just come in?
Right out of the rain.
I'd be wiser to be wet than sorry. Folks what come in these days usually wish they hadn't.
They do? Why?
Ghosts.
Ghosts?
Roaming the halls, creeping and a-crawling everywhere and a-scarifying folks away. Tourists avoid this place like the plague.
What kind of ghost?
No time to gab. Gotta make my rounds. You're gonna look about, look fast. You're the only visitors inside, and it's almost closing time.
Closing time.
We have about an hour to look around.
Shaggy points to some wax sculptures thinking it's some tourists, but Velma and Daphne explain to him that it's a tableau called The Traitors of American History. Satisfied, all but Scooby walk away, where he quickly discovers that the dummy of William Demont isn't a dummy after all. Terrified, Scooby hides under a steam locomotive engine, but the three traitors have other plans for him.
That's a tableau of traitors of American history, with wax dummies of Benedict Arnold, William Demont, and Major Andre.
They look real. They even feel real.
Turning on the locomotive sends Scooby down a trapdoor, tangling him up in a cotton spinning machine and separating him from the gang. The loud locomotive engine also drowns out Scooby's cries for help. The gang explain to a friendlier guard named Mr. Clive that Scooby is missing. Mr. Clive says he'll offer to help them, but he also tells them that they have to hurry up as it's only a couple of minutes before closing time.
Closing time.
A big, lovable hound dog with sad eyes, an infectious smile, friendly face, skinny tail? Well, that sounds like a fine pooch, but I haven't seen him anywhere. I'll help you kids find him, but you better hurry. It's only a couple of minutes till closing time.
Closing time.
Everyone splits up and takes a look for Scooby, but nobody has any luck. There's a nice nod back to What a Night for a Night, as Daphne exclaims that she's even checked out the dinosaur exhibit because we all know how much Scooby loves bones. Meeting back at the steam locomotive, the engine finally shuts off and they can hear Scooby calling for help. Freddy discovers the trap door and they rescue Scooby from the cotton gin machine. Unfortunately, because they are also under the locomotives, the guards can't see the gang and assume they are gone. So they lock up the museum using a time lock, meaning nobody can leave until the morning.
All rounds completed. The museum's empty as usual.
I guess those nice kids found their dog and left.
Quit jabbering and set the time lock.
Before they even realize they are locked in, the gang come across an important clue. They find the real wax dummies in their long underwear, meaning someone else snagged their uniforms. The ghosts of Benedict Arnold then lock the gang in the basement, and we get a brief history lesson on who he is.
It's Benedict Arnold, William Demont, and Major Andre. They sure do look silly without their uniforms.
They must be spares for those dummies upstairs.
The gang then split up to look for a way out as there are dozens of corridors in the basement. Velma is the first to find a clue as she spots wet footprints, much like the grumpy guard named Mr. Grumper had before. Following the footprints, Velma, Freddy, and Daphne come across a dead end, but the footprints seem to go past the wall they've come to. They also see two of the ghostly traders racing towards them. Before they can investigate the dead end for a secret passage, they run away from the spooky ghosts.
Look, wet footprints, just like that grumpy old guard made in the main exhibit hall.
Let's follow them. Maybe they'll lead us to a way out of this place. Dead end at the dead end.
It's the ghosts of Benedict Arnold and Major Andre.
Let's get out of here.
Scooby has a bit of luck as he finds that dinosaur skeleton that Daphne was talking about earlier, and he immediately gets to gnawing away at it. I don't think Scooby ever got the memo that dinosaur bones are actually fossilized and made out of rocks and minerals, but it's still funny nonetheless to see Scooby attacking this skeleton. Destroying the skeleton, again, it's the second time since What a Night for a Night, they are soon hunted and chased by the ghost of William Demont.
It's the ghost of William Demont!
The gang eventually reunite and find their way to the main floor. There, they run into the friendlier guard named Mr. Clive, and he tells the gang that the main floor door has a time lock on it, so there's no way out until noon the next day, which is 16 hours away. They then hear the steam locomotive fire up again, drowning out the quietness of the museum. The grumpier security guard, once again named Mr. Grumper, walks in explaining that the locomotive is acting up again. He also explains the engineer will be here any minute, which Shaggy thinks is a goof in logic as they are all locked in and no one can get in.
Hey, the museum's closed. What are you kids doing inside?
We were chased by the ghosts of Benedict Arnold, William Demont, and Major Andre.
There is no way out. The doors are all locked by time locks. They can't be opened until noon tomorrow.
Blast it. That loudmouth train is going berserk again. What are you brats doing in here after closing time? Crummy, miserable museum.
He sure is a grumpy old character.
Old Grumper's new on the job. Kind of bitter since they switched him from the day shift at the White House to working nights here at the museum.
That racket's enough to drive anyone grumpy. Can't you shut it off?
The only one who knows how to work it is the engineer. Trouble is, every time he fixes it, it seems to start right up again.
Hey! It stopped!
It turns out though that Mr. Wilt, the engineer, sleeps in the museum at night as the locomotive has been acting up so much. We also learn that Mr. Grumper is new to the job and he's bitter because he used to have the day shift guarding the White House. As Mr. Willett walks away, the gang see the same wet footprints they saw with Mr. Grumper.
Willett, city engineer. I just finished fixing this screwball locomotive.
Oh, yeah? Well, if the museum's locked with time locks, how'd you get in?
Didn't have to. With this locomotive going loco 40 times a night, I've been sleeping in. Look.
He has wet feet just like grumpy old Grumper.
And he said he was sleeping inside.
The gang follow the footprints back into the basement, and Mr. Willett is now a suspect because if Mr. Willett claimed he slept inside the museum, then there isn't any reason why he should have ever been outside because the time lock has been on the door for a couple hours now. In the basement, they realize that the locomotive is powering the cotton gin machine, so they follow the belts to the machine as well as some wet footprints along the way. And once more, they come to the dead end. Here, Scooby finds a lever on a suit of armor that allows the wall to turn. The gang then end up in a flooded storm drain cavern where they come to a concrete wall that has a huge hole drilled in it. The hole seems to be powered by a drill that seems to be powered by the locomotive. Here they discover bags of money that would even make Scrooge McDuck envy with jealousy. The gang then enter the drilled hole and they find a printing press with more bags of money. Here they conclude that they are in the US Mint and it's only a couple blocks away from the museum.
Those belts run from the cotton gin to this big drilling machine.
And someone's drilled a hole right through that 4-foot thick concrete wall.
Zoinks! Brand new $100 bills!
Come on, let's see what's on the other side of this wall.
Printing presses. Dozens of huge printing presses.
Counterfeiters! Those spirits of 76 must be counterfeiting those new $100 bills!
Counterfeiter's my foot. The only printing presses in the world this big are in the United States Bureau of Printing and Engraving.
Where the government prints money.
The U.S. Mint. We passed it driving up to the museum. It's only a few blocks away.
The gang spot the three ghostly traders and a small chase ensues until Scooby traps them underneath a wooden antique airplane, once more similar to What a Night for a Night. Unmasking the ghost of Major Andre, the gang do not recognize him. The ghost of William Demont, however, turns out to be Mr. Willett, who is the museum engineer. Shaggy suspects the ghost of Benedict Arnold as Mr. Grumper, but it turns out to be Mr. Clive.
So now let's get these creepy colonial disguises off and see who those creeps are.
It's Mr. Clyde.
It's Mr. Willett, the city engineer.
A government agent then arrives and arrests our motley trio of traitor ghosts. The gang explain that they put the real wax dummies in the basement where they took their costumes. So when the guards made their rounds at night, they could think the museum was empty as they just kind of pretend to be the ghosts of these traitors around the tableau. This allowed them to stay in the museum during the evening and work the drill using the cotton gin. The locomotive was only to cover up the noise of the drill. Mr. Willett confesses that he found old plans for the abandoned storm drain that ran all the way to the US Mint. So he devised a scheme to rob it. The mystery of Mr. Grumper's wet footprints are also explained as he says his feet were always wet as he spent so much time mopping up the wet footprints that were always about. And those wet footprints, of course, came from the flooded storm drain that the ghosts were drilling in.
Wow, a real government agent.
You kids did a terrific job.
We figured they ditched the real wax dummies in the basement and put on their clothes.
Then they posed in this tableau as wax dummies. When the honest guards made their rounds, they thought the museum was empty and locked up.
And that enabled them to stay inside all night and work the drill into the mint.
They put phosphorescent powder on their clothes and haunted the museum to keep people away.
Mr. Willett rigged the cotton gin to power the drill.
And he zooped up the soundtrack of the locomotive to cover up the cotton gin's noise.
The ghostly trader's ruse in the end turns out to be worthless as the government agent explains the money they were trying to steal is completely worthless. The bills themselves were missing a variety of details such as signatures and stamps and whatever else. Thus, the money had no value. With another mystery solved, the gang head off on their next adventure.
Fact is, those spirits of 76 made one big mistake. Now, that press room they drilled into was filled with millions of dollars in worthless money. These bills haven't had the treasurer's signature, the treasury seal, or the serial numbers printed on them yet. Fact is, without them, all that money is worth exactly as much as the paper it's printed on.
I give this episode a 9 out of 10. I really love this episode. The historical setting is so cool, and I enjoyed how the gang were locked up in a museum and could not leave. The historical villains from America's past is nothing new. We saw that in the Loch Ness mess, but the design of the bad guys are kind of creepy, and they come across as rather spooky. Like, Yeah, I'd be terrified of seeing these ghosts in a museum at night. Even though they are in that kind of vintage, silly clothing that's kind of dainty, they did look a little bit scary when they were running after the gang. I also enjoyed the start where the gang are kind of driving by all the cool landmarks. With it raining so hard out there, it was kind of cool to see the empty, kind of touristy attraction of Washington, D.C. I thought that was really cool. That scene has always stuck in my memory. Even when I watched this as a kid, as a Canadian, we didn't get much in the way of American history. I got it all through TV. So I kind of learned a lot about America just by watching this episode back as a kid. The plot was also super cool. I loved how Mr. Grumper made the perfect red herring, while the friendly guard turned out to be the bad guy. I thought that was kind of a cool setup. Nothing new, but it had me fooled, and it still fools me to this day every time I watch the episode, because I have a short-term memory. Got a memory like a goldfish. Very cool, too, how they used the locomotive and factored that in to cover up the noise of the drilling, and the cotton gin machine that ran the drill through all the gears and such was cool. Fantastic stuff. Once again, I want to thank you for any likes, views, subscribes, shares, hitting the bell notification. Whatever you do helps my channel grow. I appreciate it. I enjoy having conversations with everyone on a weekly basis. People seem excited about my reviews when they come out once a week. And, that's not something I take for granted. Every one of you watching, thank you so much. This wraps up my reviews for Season 1. Next week, I will be doing my ranking video. I'll be hopping on to then Season 2 reviews. I only have 3 reviews to do for that, and then I'll do my ranking video. Then I'll be on my summer hiatus, but like last year, I'll be doing my Scrappy videos. The short little 7-minute videos, I'll be doing a run of that from May to August or June to August, whenever the time is. And then I'll be back. We'll be starting Season 1 of the Scooby-Doo Show episodes with Scrappy, the ones that have the complete gang. That's what we'll be starting. From there, we'll kind of go work our way through the Scrappy episodes. Up until 13 Ghosts, we'll do those. We'll do a pup named Scooby-Doo. So, we got a few more years of Scooby-Doo reviews. Anyway, enough of the long-term goals. Until next week, stay spooky.